Very good.
There we go.
We're happy to have everybody here, and we've got a very special um, guest with us tonight. Nate Barham is believe it or not, an audiobook narrator. And earlier I got to listen to one of his samples, and I didn't even recognize him. It's like, you won't believe it. I think he gets to play a little of it for us tonight. It was kind of fun. But I want you to know, and so we maybe will want to have everybody kind of mute their sound unless they're pretty sure nobody's going to make any noise in the background. And
Yeah.
okay, and we will be having this
And I can't
recording
hear.
up on YouTube eventually, and so you'll have access to it. And then Nate also gave me a handout, a PDF to send around to y'all later that will have the links and stuff to all the things he's going to, well, maybe not all the stuff, but most of the stuff he's going to talk about. So I would like to introduce you to Nate, the school teacher from Genesee, Idaho, who's going to blow our minds with this stuff about audiobooks. Yeah, I know. I'm going to let him give you a little of his history because he knows who he is better than I do. Okay? Thanks, Nate. You're up.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Like she said, well, first, I'm just really appreciative to have been invited and to be able to get to present for everyone tonight. And I hope that what you hear is useful and you can take it with you and apply it to your own books, whether, however you choose to take the advice. Um, so as Linda mentioned, I'm an English teacher for high school kids in tiny, tiny little Genesee, Idaho. I live in Moscow and have for a long time and love it there. Really, really enjoy living here in Moscow. And some time after, uh, sometime sort of just shortly after COVID, decided to pick up this narrating gig. But for a long time, I had been uh, sorry, now I'm futzing with the technology. Um, so my day job is being a teacher, but for a long time, as part of being an English teacher, it's always been really important to me to be a writer as well, to bring that into the classroom and to try to help kids, especially in rural places, see that like you can do this, right? You can write a book, you can start at the first page and get to the end, and you can publish it, and all of those things. And so that's really what kind of got me started with the idea of becoming an audiobook narrator, is that I already had a book series and I wanted to get it into audio. So that's kind of a nice connection for what happened here. Spoiler though, I still haven't recorded my own book, but we'll get to that in a little bit as to why that is. Well, it's 4 books at this point. So I'm going to bring up the little slideshow that I have for us here today. And let's hope that all the technology behaves the way that it's supposed to. Okay. All right. So you should be able to see me still. You can't see my lovely booth, what you saw behind me and the mic that is, right here in front of my face. These are the actual tools that I use for recording and narrating audiobooks. You don't have to have this kind of setup in order to do this or to do it yourself, especially now. There are a lot of tools that can help you to get there, even if you're, working with $100 microphone and a quiet bedroom or a walk-in closet or things like that. There are lots of working voice actors who do that, right? That they record everything in their walk-in closet with clothes all around them. But lots of people have a room like what I was looking at here. So today we're going to be talking about this, and there we go. Let's see. Just trying to get all the tech lined out. Okay, so like I mentioned, I've been teaching for 14 years in Genesee, 20 years in Moscow, went to U of I as an English major. And so storytelling and performing are who I am, right? It's like everything about me. And so it's a great fit for me to pick up this narration thing. But it turns out that there's a lot going on here besides just being able to read fluently without mistakes, though you do kind of have to be able to do that. Um, So let's see. This thing is in my way. Let's see. Let's get to this. If Yeah, so my work as an author is on the Alora's Tier fantasy series. You can, of course, look and see that work on Amazon or whatever. And I'm not here mostly to talk about that, but I do think it's important that you know that I don't just read the books; I write the books too, and did that long before this. And so I think that's really important when whether you are reading your own book or whether you are contracting somebody else, you need someone who understands story. You need someone who understands how to make not just like make funny voices or do accents or things like that, but someone that can speak your characters to life, someone that gets it. In the same way that when we're all looking for editors, it's got to be someone who really knows what you're trying to do with the work. So you can see here, I have experience as a musician and as a stage performer in musicals and other dramatic performances. I love D&D and video games, and so the funny voices and things like that are something that I find really really fun. And so I thought, like Linda mentioned, that we could hear just a little bit of one of my most recent narrations so that you can kind of hear where I'm coming from and the kind of product that, this whole thing produces when you've got everything lined out. Sam dropped to the mud as the explosive round detonated nearby. A cogwagon parked further down the road flipped end over end and crashed into a pile of flaming debris. "Go!" Sam screamed. "Get into the trench!" The trench line was about 5 feet deep in most places and 3 feet wide. Sam followed his soldiers into the trench as the light rain turned into a steady downpour. "Where's the OIC?" he shouted to be heard above the rain and the commotion. "Hey, where's the OIC?" "Bugger off!" A mustachioed soldier shrugged off Sam's hand and poked his head above the trench line. "I'm not your babysit—" Crack! The soldier fell backward into Sam's arms as blood spurted from the holes in the front and back of his head. Sam dropped the soldier's body and recoiled. "Saunders!" A soldier shoved Sam out of the way and grabbed the corpse of the mustachioed soldier. "Saunders!" So that is me narrating a book called Sam's Valor. It's The Soldiers of the Silent War, which is the first in the Sam's Valor series. And this was something that we're going to talk about, the sort of process that went through that and how you as an author can find someone like me, who's the right person for your book to be able to make something that sounds like that from whatever it is you've written. So that's us getting into audiobooks. I first have to do a disclaimer about our current AI moment. I am not a fan for a number of reasons, and I think that's important for you to know as we go into this. That this technology is not an intelligence. It is not a human performer who is like trying to understand your characters and your story. It's non-functional without people who are much more accomplished and have put much more work and training into what they do, and it just generally disrespects our artistic efforts. And so there's a whole block of AI things that you can explore if that's your deal. But I cannot ethically or morally present those, and so I'll be skipping over all of that. So if that's something you were hoping for, I sort of gently apologize because I just really think that it's a detriment to all of us, writers, presenters, my students, everyone. So we're going to skip over that and get to The what I think is probably the most common way that authors get their books into audio, and that is calling for auditions. So you can go to ACX, which is, I think many of us would be familiar with this from self-publishing, and Audible, where you can take your book and put it up on Amazon and have make a description. Say, here's the kind of author that I want. Here's the particular which gender I would want, or a split narration where you have a male voice speaking for the male characters, and a female voice speaking for the female characters. That's done pretty often these days. But you can go there and you put up sort of hang out your shingle and say, "Hey, I'm going for auditions." And the thing is, there are thousands of us out there, and many who are at the caliber that you heard on my recording and better, that are all there, and you get to set your price as the author. You get to decide how much you're going to pay. Or how much you're willing to pay, whether you want to do a revenue share and say, well, a percentage of my sales is going to go to this, or whether, I want to do it on a per finished hour basis, which is what I do and a lot of higher end performers will do, because it takes a long time to get even 1 minute of audio that you just heard. Takes a lot of effort and time, just from prepping, reading the book, making notes, going back and forth with the author, really getting it right. Takes a lot of resources. There are some other options as well, even though that's the most common. There are some recently that have gone out of business, which is really unfortunate. There was one that I really loved, which was Findaway Voices. That's how Eli Taff, who booked me for the one that you heard, that's how he found me, as well as a couple of my other great authors that I've been able to read for. If you're looking further than just the Amazon Audible universe, you can check some places where voice actors hang out. And there are ways to post in these spaces at varying levels of sort of technical proficiency. So some of these are Discord servers, and some of them are sort of message boards. And I would say don't let the sort of DIY technology of the website or a Discord server um, discourage you. Because again, for instance, the voice acting club that you see listed there, or that you should see on your slide, has over 10,000 voice actors who are commonly active in it. And not everyone is an audiobook narrator, and not every audiobook narrator is going to be excellent. But if you put out that audition, you get to choose who it is you want. And trust me, if you put up something in one of these places, you're going to get a lot of people coming back to try, especially if you're, not saying, I want to do this for free. I want you to do this, no charge. If you're putting out and saying, yeah, I want to pay for this because I want a quality product, you're going to get a lot of people. You might get a lot that are just immediate no's, but that's also part of the audition process for any performance, right? Is if I don't know if any of you are familiar with theater, casting, and things like that. But in that kind of situation, a casting director, or just a director of even like a local community theater, is going to say no to so many people. No, 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 no. You're really good, but no, right? And that is going to be your job as an author, is to listen for 15 seconds and go, you know what? Not for me. Or listen for 5 seconds, be like, yikes, ooh, get rid of that one. And you might have to do it a bunch of times, but you're going to have so many. This is my belief, based on my experience of how many people auditions for the projects that I'm auditioning for, that you're going to be good to go. So, setting up and opening up auditions is one way to go about this. That is probably the most common way. You can also use a service. I've listed a few here on the slide. E-audio book productions, they and Pro Audio Voices, they both have a sort of stable of narrators to choose from. And if you are looking for an audiobook service, you should be able to find one that is not going to charge like nose bleeding amounts of money. Of course, because it's through a service, there's going to be an added layer. It's kind of like producing your book through BookBaby or Lulu, or something like one of those services where they do the interior design, or they help you and have artists on hand to do cover design and things like that. Um, Using a service like eProductions or Pro Audio Voices is going to have that overhead. So if you have more financial resources to be able to get started with this can be kind of an easy, I'm just going to go to one of these places, say, here's my book. I'm going to pick my narrator based on some samples, probably like the one that you heard from me, and say, let's just go. And then the product is, what you get. I would assume that the sort of timelines and things like that are going to be more standardized with a service like this. I have not worked for one of these, and I didn't use one for my books, but it is definitely something that I have I have been interested in and done some research about because as a narrator, I'd love to get on one of these rosters if I could. Okay, so we're still here. The other thing is there are gig economy options. These are things like Fiverr, Upwork. There's some other ones. Gosh, there's Voice Bunny, Badalgo. There's several of these where, and Fiverr and Upwork are the two biggest ones, where you can go and just do a search for, I want to produce an audiobook, and you'll find tons of gig economy style workers who this is their job, or at least a big slice of it, voice actors and narrators. And I use an audio editor, actually, who we first met through Fiverr and now work just independently together. But you can start up a you can start up a gig there and actually connect with this person, go back and forth. I would say that out of the options, using a service is the lowest risk, obviously the highest cost. The gig economy option is probably the highest risk, because there's a lot of people who, it can just be less reliable. But there are so many, like I said, my audio editor, who goes from my voice sounding pretty good in this room to sounding basically perfect on the final audio, who he is indispensable to me. He's from Fiverr, and so you can get really, really good technical chops on these services. And then hanging out your audition on your own, of course, is going to come down to you and the particular narrator that you've chosen. So sometimes it has more risk involved than if you're using a service like one of these. Okay. So our third big way, I think, is recording it on your own, right? Like that is, I think, one of the things that people really want to know about is like, well, how do I do this? Can I do this? I've got a lot of extra time. I mean, that's why I was able to write a novel, or maybe I don't have that, and that's what those other options are for, because I'm busy writing the next novel. So if you're recording it on your own, some services like Audio Book Productions or Pro Audio Services, the two that I was looking at before, they will offer a package where the narrator is the author. So you read it yourself, and then they do all the magic. So it's kind of like what I do with my audio editor, only you would have whatever equipment you might have on hand. But what's nice about audiobook narration is that though it's great if you can have all of that audio quality, it's not necessary, right? The thing that is necessary is someone who knows the story and who can read it fluently in a way that is listenable to someone else. And there are more ways than ever to do that, even in just the last couple of years. To get started, you need a quiet space, like we talked about at the very beginning. A lot of people use walk-in closets, like I said. A lot of people will use like a like an armoire, or a sort of like open up kind of piece of furniture in a bedroom where you've got your mattress and comforter and maybe a closet open with some clothes inside it. And then inside of this, you can put some padding around with pillows and moving blankets and things like that and just speak right into it. And you're actually going to get really close to audio quality that you might hear from, even really high end productions like celebrity kind of reads, where, they're not necessarily spending all day in a booth. And so, yeah, a quiet space that has nice padding and things around it is going to help a lot. A lot of people think, about sound isolation. They think soundproofing. Um, you don't need as much of that as you think. Obviously, if there are cars driving by or machinery running outside and beeping when it tries to reverse, or dogs barking, this is the bane of all audiobook narrators, all voice actors at all, is barking dogs, because you can hear them even through a booth like mine sometimes. But as long as you don't have that going on, you can find a quiet room. That's usually enough. Is like, make sure the furnace isn't running or the air conditioner isn't running, and have some of that sound absorption that we talked about before. You're going to be able to get most of the way there. And if you're using a service, they're going to be able to eliminate the rest of that pretty easily. Um, on your own, to eliminate some of that sound, it's a little trickier and it requires some technical knowledge and experience, some computer savvy, which some of us have, and some of us are not as much about that, and all of that's great. But it's important to know that isolation, soundproofing, is not as important as you might think. And really, it's about sound absorption. What we want to do is eliminate echoes. We want to eliminate what's called reflections. So if you've ever been in a big live room, big empty, I don't know. Not maybe not as big as a gym, but just like if you've ever, like, when you first move into a house and you haven't moved your stuff into your big living room, and you can hear those echoes and things banging around, that is what we want to eliminate, because all of that will bounce back to the microphone, which you can't see in my little cutout, but it'll all bounce back to the microphone, and it'll be less, but it's still in there. And so we want to try to have things to soak it up. That's what our sound absorption is for. After that, if you are really going to try to go and run with this, you're going to want to practice a lot and make sure that you have really thought through how you want your book to sound, how you want to read it, and then you're going to need recording software. Now, most computers come with something, and if you're working with one of those services, you might be able to make it work just fine with, say, with a cheap microphone and voice memos on your iPhone, right? Or your Android phone, whatever their audio, basic audio recording thing is, because a lot of the magic is going to happen when they edit it all for you. But if you're going to do this yourself, you'll need something a little beefier. And the most common one that people will use is actually the last one on my list, which is Audacity. It's free. It's open source, which means that the community contributes to building it, rather than a big company. And so Audacity is one that people have used, for, beginning narrations. It has lots of powerful tools such as noise reduction, and lots of ways to sort of divide up your audio, to move pieces around if you need to re-record over certain sections and things like that. So Audacity is really the go-to for most people. If you're trying to level things up a little bit more, Reaper and Adobe Audition are the two big ones that voice actors like myself use. I personally use Adobe Audition because there's one or two tools that are really good for getting rid of certain little clicks and noises that, until you start talking into a microphone a lot, you don't even know exist. And then you start hearing them everywhere, which is really unfortunate. But Adobe Audition is really good at being able to remove that little spot removal tools, kind of like you would do for like removing red eye in old photo apps on a computer when we got red eye in pictures that had flashes and things like that. So Adobe Audition is really good for that, and various other things. It lets you see the audio in two separate ways. which I don't have an image to show you here of how that works, but it's one of its big strengths is the double view. And if you just hop over to the Adobe Audition sort of main page, you'll see that interface of the waveform that we're kind of all used to seeing, and then its second view, which is really useful for finding small little imperfections in the sound. And then there's Reaper. Reaper is like the people's champion. Adobe's the big, the big scary company that everybody uses, and Reaper is the scrappy one. And a lot of voice actors love this tool. It's very customizable. It's extra nerdy. So as much as Adobe Audition is complicated, like any Adobe program like Photoshop or Premiere or After Effects, Reaper is just as much, maybe more, but it lets you dial things in exactly how you want them to be. And like I said, there's only really one or two features that are keeping me away from it. Adobe Audition, subscription if you don't already pay for Adobe stuff. Reaper is a one-time charge, and it has a free mode that you can use indefinitely. The company has recognized that lots of people use the free mode for a really long time until they hit, there's sort of like a handshake contract that says, hey, once you get to selling this much using Reaper, please pay for a license. And it's cheap, like $50 or something like that, rather than multiple installments for a year of Adobe products. And again, Audacity is free. So, as in free. Okay. So if you're doing recording and narration yourself and you found your DAW, your digital audio workstation, I didn't put that in one of the slides, but yeah, your DAW is your recording software. So if you're looking these up and you want to see more than just the three that I showed you, and boy, there are a lot, you can. You can check those out, and they are, yeah, digital audio workstations. Those are the kind of software you want for producing something like this. So once you get that, you're going to need some narration techniques and some sort of mic technique and things like that. Punch and roll is the big one. And what that means is that we don't sit down usually and just like page one, da 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 da, right? And we just read it off and read it to the end. That's usually not how it works. Instead, you read for a while until you hit a place where you mispronounce a word or you lose your place on the page and you pause and you rock it back just a little bit. And then you hit record again and it'll give you the sound of your voice for 3 or 4 seconds and then start recording, with a no stop, right? Just go smoothly through. And so we're punching in to make an edit where we've made a mistake, and then we're rolling along. And so we punch in and we roll. And so punch and roll is the main technique that people use to record audiobooks because it means that your final product has way fewer errors or mistakes, which means for if you're narrating yourself, that's way fewer pickups for you to have to do when the whoever it is, right? Let's say you have a service or you have somebody doing the editing for you, or even if you're editing yourself, it's fewer corrections that you have to go in and try to make. And it works pretty well if you're punching and rolling, because if I'm working on Monday and then I start the new chapter on Tuesday and I keep going, the sound is fine between those story breaks. But if we have my voice on Monday, and then in the middle of the sentence, we have my voice 2 weeks from now on Thursday after I had a cold, well, now we've got a really different sounding little chunk in our pickup. And so we want to have as few of those as possible. So punch and roll eliminates that as much as we can. So you get half a dozen corrections when you're done, whether you have to find them yourself because you're doing the editing, or whether your service finds those and sends them back to you to say, hey, re-record this sentence or this paragraph. We're usually not doing like whole chapters or anything like that. You can also do a straight read or character voices. So depending on your familiarity with audiobooks, there are plenty of famous works that are done as a straight read. They don't do all of the accents and the, people shouting from the trenches and taking gunfire and, things like that, like you heard in the sample. You just have someone who's an engaging narrator who like I said, feels the story and can bring it forward through their voice. And they just stay in their normal register, and maybe they'll, sort of lighten their voice for a female character and deepen it a little bit for a male character, or change it based on the sort of attitude of a character and not and sort of regardless of gender. But that's what we would call a straight read. The I always think of this as the two great examples of this are actually the Harry Potter series. So if you've ever listened to the audio version of Harry Potter, in America, it's narrated by Jim Dale, and he is the man of 1,000 voices. If I ever have a tenth of his voices, it will be incredible. He's awesome, and he's the perfect example of character voices. But in the UK, the same series is narrated by Stephen Fry, and he does it completely straight, just Stephen Fry voice the whole way through, and it's also fantastic. So both of these can be really compelling for your story, and it doesn't necessarily matter which genre you're in. Fantasy tends to have voices, but it doesn't have to. So it's really up to how you like for your audio to sound when you're done, whether you record it or whether someone else does. Um, we kind of have talked a little bit about the things on this slide already. We have the editing process, which means, just making sure that all the clicks and gaps and loud breaths and things like that are removed. Then we have the proofing process, which is kind of what we talked about a little bit before, which is getting your corrections back, right? So they're proofing it, they're comparing it. This is an editor comparing it against the original text. And the editor can be you, or it can be someone who you pay on Fiverr just to do the editing. So let's say you've done all of the recording. You can pay someone to be the editor for you, like I mentioned that I do for my narrations. So that's the proofing process. And then we have mastering. And mastering is getting everything spliced up and in the right file formats and quality formats for whatever service you're using to put that audiobook out there. So if you're using Amazon and Audible, they have a bunch of rules for how quiet the quiet parts of a track can be and how loud the average loudness needs to be. This is probably the trickiest part of mastering, is going from, hey, I recorded this great narration and all these characters and this whole story and it's beautiful, and then they squish it so that it's really loud when you're in a car or in your headphones and you're walking down a crowded street, and so that you can still hear the narration. So that's the mastering process. It consists of both adjusting the audio for loudness and for the quietest portions. It also consists of splitting up the files per chapter, or if you're not really doing chapters, splitting it up at a certain time amount, because each file can only be so long in number of minutes, and then having it ready to go up onto whatever web service that you're using, whether it's Amazon or something else. And also, if you are doing this yourself, you need time, and you need a lot. There will be a lot of mistakes, most likely, even if you're a really excellent reader. I've spent, um, 14 years at Genesee and so it's like 17, 18 years being an English teacher. I read to kids a lot, and it was a huge surprise when I got to my first book that I was doing for someone, that I was like, wow, okay, I'm good at this for 5 minutes at a time, or even 15 minutes at a time, but it takes hours to get what we call a finished hour. So when we have a per finished hour rate, um, we're charging based on 1 hour of completed audio. And that sometimes can take 4, 5, 6 hours for the narrator to produce, especially if they're doing the editing. For me, it's usually in the 2 hour range or so, 2, 3. Once I get done working with them and doing pickups and all of that, maybe 3 hours, maybe a little more. I don't know. I kind of stopped tracking it at one point, but it takes a long time to do this. And when you're first starting out, you're going to make a lot more mistakes, and the software for editing is going to get in your way until you get your feet underneath you and start figuring it out. Or if you're not doing it yourself, then you don't have to worry about any of this. But it might take your narrator some time. For instance, if it's me, it takes me quite some time. I usually do an hour 1 week, and then I'll send it off to my editor. And by the next week, that hour is done. And so then I'll send that for proofing back to the author. And the for that hour, and then we do the next hour until we have a book. And because I'm a teacher and I work during the week, my time speed, my time that it takes to do it is longer. But other narrators who are in the booth all day long, every day, are going to have much more compressed timelines for you, but they still, are limited in the amount of talking that we can do in any given day and days in a row, also. So that factors in if you're paying someone to do your recordings for you. The last option that I want to mention is you could always have me do it. And if you want to talk to me about narrating a book for you, or even just have more questions about this after the presentation is over, you can contact me via email or on my website at natebarham.com/VO is the voiceover section where all of my narration and stuff is. And then the top level is for my own books and some of the sort of blogging that I have done over the years. Also on Threads and Mastodon, if you use those clients, and you can contact me there. You're welcome to follow me and interact. I love using, especially Mastodon. It's a great non-corporate social media platform that I really like. So if you were to work with me, like I said, there's that sort of turnaround process that I have. I charge $300 per finished hour, and that's pretty, I would say, a pretty standard range for somebody who's at the quality level that I am. You can certainly go higher than that, much higher, especially if you're using certain services. But if it gets much higher than that, maybe another $100, maybe $150. If you start pushing higher than $450, $500 per finished hour, I would certainly look at other options unless you really, really love what you're working with. So that is what I have for you. To conclude, I just wanted to say that I think you all will. I don't know. I don't know you guys, but um, just remember that whatever you choose, the purpose is for your book to be part of the human storytelling tradition, right? In the way that we all tell stories in print, the narration process is part of that storytelling that we take back to the caveman fires. And every time that we listen to a narrator, a human person interpreting a story and speaking it to us, we participate in that great tradition. And I just love that. But I'm a teacher, so what are you going to do? All right, that's it. That's what I plan to say. If there are questions, I will try my best to answer them. I am, I'm an amateur who gets paid and not a full-time, do this every day of the week kind of a narrator. And so I will do my best if we have questions.
May I ask you to go away from screen share so that we can see everyone's faces?
Absolutely.
It helps when people
Boom.
have questions. Okay. And I think, who was that asked first? Jay, you want to just go ahead and unmute. And at this point, I don't think any of us have much trouble with background sound if we're not interrupting Nate. There you go.
Okay, my question is, when you have a finished hour, typically how many words do you have in an hour? I know it's going to be a little bit of a range, but about how many words do you have per hour of your?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm surprised that I didn't have it in the list. Per finished hour rate is usually on 9,000 words, and it's it's kind of uncanny how close it lands to that. Unless you're speaking really slowly, uncomfortably slowly, or sort of unsettlingly fast. 9,000 is, I've found, is a really good estimate. So yeah, it's about 9,000 words.
Thank you.
Linda, are you fielding questions or
No,
like?
no, I usually people just speak up, but it looks like people are wanting to use the chat, which is okay.
Okay, so we had how many words, and then I'm wondering
Very
about.
wondering, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, using sound effects such as, okay, so Jerry is asking about using sound effects such as interior noise inside a car. So some productions do use this. I've never been part of an audiobook narration that uses that, so I'm not sure, but I've done several audio drama podcasts that use a lot of that, and all of that's done in post-production, which if I were trying, if I knew I needed that in a book, I would be shopping it out to someone who's an audio engineer and really knows their stuff about finding the right sound effects and layering them in the right way so that you have the voice carrying over the audio bed below. So I know enough about this to kind of get myself in trouble. And I know enough to know I don't know enough, I guess. And so that's what I would say about interior sounds is I would strongly recommend bringing in an audio engineer to do that.
Joan?
Yeah.
So a finished book would be probably about 2,600 to $3,000. Is that about right? Because if it's 9,000 words and $300 per finished hour, that would be about 2,600. So you're roughly talking about 3,000.
Yes.
So I was wondering also, I'm more interested in doing the calling for audiences. I don't exactly understand how that works on ACX or Audible. What, do they give you a price per hour, or what if?
So on um So on ACX and Audible, which are really just the same thing by a different name, the way that they do that is to have the author determine how much they want to pay per hour, and knowing that 9,000 words is about one finished hour. And so if I'm scrolling, so on my side, if I'm scrolling through um, possible books to audition for, what I'll see is essentially like a filter box like you'd have if you're shopping, right? Where I would say, you know, only male narration, and only, or whatever. And then I can choose, do I want $300 per finished hour? Do I want 100 to 400, right? I can choose kind of a range that says these are the ones that I would be accepting and so or willing to audition for. And so the author really puts that in there themselves on that service. There are some like I don't have any off the top of mind that are this. I think Bidalgo might work this way. Bodalgo. Bodalgo might work this way. Find Away Voices did. And what that does is it has the narrator set their per finished hour rate. And then you, as the author, shop for narrators and say, oh, well, I don't want to look for anybody who's over 200 per finished hour because I know that's going to mean I'm over my budget for my 150,000 word thing. Oh, we've got more in the chat here. Okay. Um, okay. So Chris, um, can I hear you ask your question, if that's okay?
Yes, so the estimate that you gave us, was that just for doing the narration, or does that include like the final edited product?
So for me, the 300 per finished hour that's you're done and dusted, right? Like it's that, and I handle what my editor gets paid and how much and all that. I do all that on my side. The only thing that would remain is uh, having bespoke album art for your or cover art for your audiobook. I don't do anything involved with that, so you'd still be trying to do that, and most people do a modification of their original cover art. Does that answer what you were saying? On ACX or Audible, when you're going in and saying, "Hey, I want someone for 300 per finished hour or 200 or whatever you choose," that's usually what they're saying. That's what the finished hour means, is that it should be all the way done. And if it's not, then they'll say finished hour and they'll add that, well, I don't do editing, you just get a clean, so I'm not going to add sound effects or music or something like that. You just get a clean audio of your book, and then from there you can do what you want. But usually PFH, per finished hour, means it's done, it's ready. You just put it up. Okay, let's see. Also, services that use actors of drama clubs or college university. Okay, so, uh, Jerry, do you mind clarifying or like giving us a little bit more of what your question is?
Actually, I'm just wondering if such a program exists that you use other actors, and that would make it cheaper for you to hire someone that would be less expensive than what you are charging us
Okay.
for.
Yeah. So like I said, so if you were to go to the voice acting club, that is like, or something like that. There are other organizations out there besides that one. That's just the one that I just love them so much. They were so helpful when I was first trying to learn how. There's, like I said, over 10,000 people involved in that group, and they're really supportive, really, really cool people there largely. And so if you were to use something like that, you're going to get people of all walks, right? So some people who are very new at this or who don't have a lot of stage experience or something like that, don't have a lot of narration experience. You're also going to find people who have vast performance experience, like way more than I have, and maybe less the technical side, right? So people who have degrees in performance, people who are former actors in, New York Broadway actors and things like that, who will do this sort of work as things between their stage gigs. So really, it's sort of once you start casting out there, sort of casting your net and looking for these websites that are taking auditions. You're looking for places that are taking auditions for audiobook narrators, because when you do that, you're going to find people, and you're going to find people who are really qualified. And they won't all be, there's a variation in price that people can, you know, be able to give their time for. And just like anything, there are some that are more expensive and some that are less.
Yeah, I wonder if part of what Jerry might be thinking of is if you have an ensemble of readers, how does that work?
Mm.
Because they may all have to be in, like in the old radio days, when they were in a room and had all their mics. Is that similar, or do people usually do separate recordings?
So these days, I mean, if you're talking about the kind of universe that I've been discussing tonight, it's going to be people who are doing individual bits. So there are things that are cast. It's just so hard. But there are books that are cast with multiple people doing various roles and so on. But someone then has to be the sort of casting director for that. Someone has to be the person who brings all of those actors together, make sure that their audio sounds the same and layers in well. This is that sort of like audio drama podcast thing that I have participated in from time to time, and it's much more technically complex than one person reading into the mic, but it can sound great. And of course, there are outside of this universe I'm talking about, kind of like the indie space, major production houses do this
Oh,
in
nice.
like in a
Thank
giant
you.
studio room.
John was ahead of you, Jay, please.
Yeah. I was wondering, once you have the finished hours and stuff,
Mhm.
what do you load that onto a file and then put it on? That's how Amazon gets it or something, just as an example, because, I put books, that I've had internally designed, and I just get a file and put it right to there. Is that the same way that you do with audiobooks?
Yep. So for me, there are several different services that you might have files sent to you through. But for my authors, like I will send them a folder, a shared folder in Google Drive, and then they have access to that folder for some amount of time. Usually well more than they need to download the files and have them on their own computer and back them up however they choose to. And then yeah, so that is the way that I get my files that I've created, and my editor has created to send to you. That's how you're going to get it from most people. Is you're either going to get it from Google Drive, or maybe perhaps an iCloud Drive share, or maybe WeTransfer was a big thing with people for a while there. So you might see one of those. Some services like Fiverr have enough space available, or Upwork have enough space available that you can just upload the entire set of files into the like gig project. And that way everything is through that system. It gives you some level of protection, which is really nice, which in some of the other situations you may not have as much.
Jay, you had a question, and then I want to hold space for the Guy twins, because they have a question here, but it looks like a little bit later question. What was yours, Jay?
Yeah, I was talking about the services, about we were talking about drama clubs. There was one I listened to probably 15 to 20 years ago. Dealing with Dragons by Patricia Reedy. Did a little series about the fantasy series. And they did, I think it was some sort of a drama club or something that they did that whole audiobook series using, I think, 4 different actors. So yeah, it's been around for a while.
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely ensemble recordings that can be done. As far as like the technical aspect, it's usually, if you're you're trying to book a voice actor, you're going to get someone in a room like this, and you'll get 4 of them, and they work together. And usually you'll have somebody who brings that whole production together, whoever your audio engineer is / director, to make sure that everybody is acting those scenes in the way that makes sense with each other. And you can, of course, still do them in rooms. But again, that's kind of outside of my.
I think it's DJ. Is that, which one of you is DJ? Okay, and you're muted, so you might want to.
Can you hear me now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we were just wondering, we have a friend that works for the radio, and she has a recording studio and offered to have us record our book, our children's book. And we were just wondering, what do we do after that? How do we go about publishing and marketing it? Is it like the same as a regular book?
Well, you're out of my domain. I hate marketing, like a lot of authors. I think it's my least favorite part of all of this. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't have a better answer than that.
that's fine.
Joanna, do you want to unmute and ask your question? You were next, I think.
Me?
Yeah.
Nate, you mentioned that, so you get the files with the finished hours, and it comes in, like, let's say I have you do that and you send me the files. Do I need like a mastering piece to be done to get it uploaded, so now that it's where it's supposed to be? Is that
So usually the authors will accept the files, and then they're the ones who have the account with, Amazon's just the easiest example. We all know there are other places to go.
Right.
But like that's the easy example. So if you get the files from your voice actor, whoever you've picked, And they're all spliced up in the way, I mean, if it's done right, you've got them split into chapters, they're in a little folder, and all you have to do is click on that folder and put them into the Audible interface, into the Amazon interface, like you would if you were doing a self-published book. You would just do it with your EPUB file, but here you do it with 10 or 12 or however many little audio files that are in that folder. One of them's the sample, and it's labeled, the file name is labeled sample, and front matter and back matter and all of those things like we're used to in a print book. And then you just slot those into their spots, and you're good to go.
I would imagine the form or the one of anything else, the matrix that you're trying to put this into would include uploading whatever cover art you wanted, and then whatever, you know, data about when it's published and who owns it and all that jazz, right?
Yep, that's all there. Yeah, if you've ever walked through the process for doing an ebook that way, it's very similar. You're just uploading multiple files instead of the one.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hmm.
Did we get to everybody? Are there any outstanding ones that we missed?
My goodness, this is a first. We got 2 minutes or so to go. This is amazing. Usually we're like flopped all over the place.
Sorry. So let's see. There was the marketing question, and once you get the finished, yeah, the mastering. So yeah, those were the two in the chat.
And I will tell all of you, because some of you weren't here in the very beginning, that Nate did give me his PDF with all those links. So I will
Yes.
send that out to everybody, and then you can just follow those links that will take you to the site, and you can, you know, see what he's talking about.
Yep. And it's very simple. It's not the whole slide deck. It's just the set of links labeled so that you know which section that they were from, and they should take you to the right place.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was interesting.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's great. You can all unmute.
I hope it was
now,
helpful.
and you can
Yeah.
clap.
So
and, you know, and
hopefully it moves you
all
forward on that process.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
wonderful.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. And now I want to go read your book because, you know, dude,
Oh.
you're gonna have to do some audio versions. You know that, don't you?
Please, yes, please read my books.
Yeah.
I would love that. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Okey-doke.
fun.
Yeah, thank you.
all right. Well, thank you all, and have a good night.
Yeah,
You too. God bless.
take it easy. Bye.
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 Anybody have any questions for me? No? Okay then. Go home. It's Tracy.
Bye.
Go home.